I want to follow a bit on what Dr. Paul mentioned and praise the administration for its act of diplomacy, and in particular for the action that has been taken on Cuba to allow Cuban Americans the right to visit family as frequently as they would like to. I think that is both humane and the right thing to do, and so I think that was a good move. My concern moving forward is that there have been certain signals from some in the administration that we may want to condition future action on Cuba based on what the Cubans do. And the administration has stated that the embargo has not worked. It has not had the desired effect, and I think that is quite self-evident after 50 years. But to then say, so we're going to condition and not move any further until the Cubans take certain action. I think that many of us have been convinced, or are certainly not convinced, that the Cubans want, for example, the travel ban to be fully lifted. If you remember during the Clinton administration, when action was taken where it looked like normalization of relations might happen, a plane was shot down. A few years ago, when we moved legislation through the House and the Senate to lift the travel ban or to prohibit enforcement of it, detainees were taken, 75 of them. So every time it seems that we've taken a move, the Cubans push back with something else, and I fear that if we take the same position that's been, I think, the trap that previous administrations have fallen into, then we'll have the same result. I think to the extent that we have dialogue with the Cubans, we ought to say something like this. We've relaxed restrictions on Cuban Americans. We want to relax restrictions on all Americans. And if you don't start releasing political prisoners, we're going to lift the whole embargo. Because truly, I think that is what they fear worse than anything. And so why should we condition future action based on what they do or they don't do? We should do what is good for America, and in this sense, I think it's also good for Cubans, but I'd love to hear your response.
Well, Congressman, that's an interesting formulation I've never heard before. Look, I think that Congressman Smith and certainly the ranking member are very strongly expressing the opinions of many Americans, not just Cuban Americans, that a regime which is so dug in and unwilling to exercise the normal functions of a government, to have a judiciary that's independent, to have the rule of law, to release political prisoners, is one that is very difficult to move. I understand that. But on the other hand, I think that the president's actions did draw a response from Raul Castro, which was then contradicted today by Fidel Castro, saying that my brother really didn't mean that we would talk about political prisoners and human rights. So I think you can see there's beginning to be a debate. I mean, this is a regime that is ending. It will end at some point, and we need to be ready to do that, and we have responded to Raul Castro's comments by saying that we would consider a discussion that would include human rights and political prisoners. As you know, the embargo is part of our law. I mean, a president cannot lift the embargo. That has to be done by an act of Congress. If the Congress decides that's in America's best interest, obviously the administration will abide by that. But we're going to proceed very carefully in this process because we know what's happened before. I well remember when those two small unarmed planes doing nothing more than dropping pamphlets were shot down by the Castro regime. And I believed then, and I think you said it well today, it was done to prevent us opening. But it was also an act of such aggression and violence that you can't let it go unanswered either. So this is a difficult calculation. Our goal is for a free, independent democracy that gives the people of Cuba a chance to have the same opportunities that their sisters and brothers and cousins and, my sister-in-law who came to this country from Cuba, that they have in our country. And so we're looking at it, and we welcome your advice.
Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The